All right. Who is ready to talk sports, education, and entrepreneurship? Let's do it. Hi, everyone. I'm Shadee Barkan. I'm the Chief Business Officer of BookClub, and we are going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to me, and that is empowering celebrities to be teachers. We do this often at BookClub ourselves. We work with influencers to unlock the power of books. And I am up here with 4 incredible panelists. I'm feeling very unaccomplished next to them. And I wish we had more time to share their personal stories, but definitely read their bios. You will be absolutely blown away. So, Odessa, Jay, Dwayne, and Cortney, thank you for joining us today. Let's start with a broad question. So platforms out there, Masterclass, TikTok, YouTube, have really empowered influencers and celebrities to start to shape the opportunities for education and skills training. Not everyone out there is sort of in support of this. Outcomes haven't been proven yet, impact on students. I obviously am part of a business that's very much in support. But what are your thoughts on that, and what do you say to them?
I guess I'll start, being that our business focuses on celebrities. But I kind of have a contrarian view to it in a way. So let's like spice the panel up. I think that there is this huge focus on celebrities right now. And it's cool because, you know, whether it's Procter & Gamble or just large consumer brands, they've proven that celebrities obviously drive engagement and traffic. But I think, like, specifically for what we're doing, which is creating, I guess, somewhat a masterclass for people of color, our community we have to democratize the imagery of what success looks like amongst minorities. And so before we just go too deep on celebrities, we have to also sensationalize entrepreneurs and successful executives that are black and brown and give them the same amount of resources and attention that we have given Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant and all of these actors for the last 30 years, right? And, you know, there might be investors out here, but that traditionally has not happened until the capital markets or institutional investors have saw that they could actually make a reward on it. And now I guess we realize that you can have social impact and have a return on investment outside of just your balance sheet. So now it's a little bit more welcoming. So my take is, yes, celebrities are great and we leverage it to drive eyeballs. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to not let my community go down the rabbit hole of continuously relying on celebrities. So that's my take.
Yeah, I think I'm not as contrarian, but I think that, sorry. But I think that storytelling and influencers have been important to us since the beginning of time. And with the advent of technology and data and this sensationalism about content, really to me, all goes back to the history of storytelling and the power of storytelling and the imagery of storytelling and frankly, the resources around celebrity to tell a story and have a story be leveraged across multiple platforms is really, really important. And so while I'm not a person who sees any opportunity as singular. I think influencers and celebrities have a role in education and knowledge building and representation, but that role is not singular. It doesn't circumvent the role of the family or the employer or anyone else, but I think it's highly critical to the way we tell stories today, the same as the shaman told the story in the village, the same as my mother and grandmother told the story in the stories in the South. That's important, so I think it has a huge role.
Well, I think it's more about the curation of the content more than anything. You know, as gatekeepers of that content, I think it's important that, you know, you're not sensationalizing the reason that social media is bad. I have 7 million followers and I wear the same swimsuit every day and be like me, right? Like we're creating bad behaviors because we're not curating that content. And so within that, if we can be the gatekeepers of good information, but also do it in a way like Cortney says, where you're doing it in not only just a diverse, but in a holistic way. And so like you work with a sports team, for instance, is what we were just talking about. So like we'll work with the Vancouver Canucks and NHL team. And so we'll do a player profile because all the kids want to learn about the player. But when we'll do one with like the hospitality director that throws a party for 20,000 people every night, and what's that like to curate all that stuff? And how do you teach young people how to set the table? Or you go into like a marketing director, how do you actually create a social media campaign for this NHL hockey team? And then you go down to the Zamboni driver who teaches you about how ice freezes and how to do that through math. And so within that, you create an ecosystem of the celebrity, which is, X player or brand or whatever, but you can do it in a much more holistic way that creates this whole opportunity side of true future of, oh, I could be that and work for that club without being that superstar player that none of the kids are actually going to be.
I agree.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, there's not going to be a ton of debate here. This is actually a unique panel in that we're all working hard together to make sure that we are empowering just, voices out there to drive more impact. Along that sort of vein, one of the questions that I had for you all is, what are some of the barriers that you're seeing today in how we can empower influencers, celebrities, athletes to be very effective in terms of their abilities to shape the future of education for the better?
I think you have to meet them where they're used to, right? So, content, right? Celebrities, a lot of times, their value is their brands that they've worked hard to shape. They tell a story. And as an organization, you have to find the resources to protect that because they're very sensitive to how they appear to society. And I also think that now, because you can see so many different sides of brands, it actually creates a meaningful opportunity for a lot of organizations because you can allow them to tap into things that they may not have had the ability to really share. And all of a sudden now, if you can make Kobe Bryant look like the amazing basketball player, what happened when you're a financial services firm or Bloomberg, and you can now shape him as the business icon, right? And that's just like a use case that you pretty much have the opportunity to probably create with any celebrity that exists in the world, just giving them the opportunity to polish themselves and display a new side of them.
I think one of the biggest barriers is fear. Fear of loss, fear that you're not going to display your authentic self. I think when I think of influencers, I just don't think about celebrities. I think about CEOs. I think about business leaders because a lot of these celebrities are business leaders. They are a company. And when I think about the barriers to them truly sharing knowledge, it's fear, right? It's the same reason why most of us don't share our full selves where we are. It's because you're fearing something, your fear of loss. So I think we need to figure out ways, and it's very complex, that you can't get canceled so easily, that celebrities and bosses and business owners can make mistakes. And I think that's going to open up their willingness to share knowledge.
I don't always think that the celebrity is the greatest teacher or the master of anything is always the greatest teacher. I think that's the role of the educators, the observers, the ones who take that knowledge and is thus able to translate it in such a way that it's easily digestible for those that come after them. Because attaining that knowledge is difficult, right? Like you have to lean into some sort of discomfort, and that's kind of the issue with a lot of technology today. Whether it's ed tech or anything else, they want to grab you, grab your attention, use that engagement, but not usher you into that discomfort that it takes to accumulate the knowledge, right? So that you go from information to knowledge to hopefully wisdom if you lean into it long enough.
And I think lastly on that is just like really promoting the holistic version of it is what we do. We make sure that you're not just talking about what makes you famous. You know, like we just shot an actress who has a degree in finance, and I guarantee you, on the 14-paragraph episode she got in Variety magazine, she didn't get to talk about her finance degree and what made her interesting or why she left it to end up being really good at the business side of acting because of that reason. And so I think what we found with our celebrities is that everyone we bring across, like, you actually get to tell your story as it was an episode. And so when you get to the end of the episode 7, you're like, whoa, that was really interesting. I never got to say that to GQ, or I never got to say that to Sports Illustrated, because all Sports Illustrated cares about was the one game that I won and why I'm in this magazine. And so you never really get to go to the depth of that authenticity that makes a lot of these celebrities true. But also, again, like, what are you talking about? Are you just talking about Chrome, or are you talking about the base? And so we try to make sure that by normalizing the base and saying it's okay, like my mom died of cancer, or my brother lost his job and so we had to move town, and X, whatever, that makes our stories unique. But very rarely do celebrities get to go there and tell those stories, in my opinion.
Until they create their own platforms.
Yes.
So that's why, like, school is changing, the concept of what is a school, the concept of where do you learn. I think that's how you break some of that barrier, because you are seeing a lot of celebrities and entertainers say, you know what, I'm gonna get outside of some of these big platforms and create my own platform so that I can tell my story. And that's scary to a lot of big boxes, but it's really exciting to those who care about education, because that's where you really see celebrities come out of the box.
Well, and then you can also collaborate too, where that's what makes it more fun and even more authentic too.
I think also, like, providing them with the framework to teach. Teaching is hard, right? You know, so when we produce or write, you know, this content, we have think tanks. We have PhDs from Harvard, from academia, but we have screenwriters that have Oscars from LA, and then we work with them to make sure they're comfortable, because also it's very awkward just sitting in front of a camera, right? They're used to dramas, various formats that are of entertainment. So, you know, thank God we have this thing now, I think we call it edutainment. But just like bridging the gap and meeting them halfway also, because like you said, fear, right? No one wants to do anything that really makes them uncomfortable. So when you're doing something and taking a risk and kind of like repositioning your brand from going like celebrity to I really am like very knowledgeable about this and I'm going to go deep into this subject level or subject matter, it behooves you to kind of like give them the blueprint to make them feel comfortable while also like actually getting the point across.
Right, because the future has always belonged to those who self-regulate, right? The future has always belonged to those who self-regulate. So it's cool to give someone the clues, and one of my favorite quotes is, greatness leaves clues. Yeah, but it's up to the observer to pick up those clues and then figure out how those clues are best utilized with their skill set.
Yeah, and now with younger people, you got to make that fun, and you got to put celebrities on it. You got to figure out where those clues are.
Well, do we have to, or is that just the common trend that everyone wants to follow, right?
Yeah. Look, we've talked a lot about being authentic. We've talked about not every celebrity is a great teacher. We've talked about the blueprint in terms of training. We work with that at BookClub in terms of authors who aren't comfortable in front of the camera, you know, writing all day, and now suddenly you're being interviewed by Barbara Corcoran, and it's incredibly intimidating. You know, you've all worked with celebrities throughout your career, and I think a lot of organizations are looking for what is the right formula to crack in terms of how do I leverage influencers to, you know, expand our impact. What's some advice that you would share based on lessons that you've learned along the way that we haven't yet talked about? What's gone wrong?
With the wealthy and transient workforce that I work with, surveys aren't always, well, in-person surveys is the best way to get a survey done, right? Like, don't try to send them a text message. Not from SurveyMonkey, not from any other platform. No, get in their face, ask them the questions in order to analyze the problem. And it's one of the issues that I'm facing is how wealthy and transient, and how now with NIL in the college ranks, distracting guys further from education, right? Like, where are we going to be in 10 years where this, or in 5 years, where this workforce who have always been able to get paid for their services on the pitch or on the gridiron or on the court, right? Like, and have never had to actually learn and accumulate any skills to create in this world, right? So it doesn't matter if you play for 2 years or 10 or 20. At the end of the day, we're all transitioning into the real world. And if you don't have the network or the tools in order to create, you're just going to be a rich guy without those tools, or a broke guy without those tools if you don't play 2 years.
Very quickly. Right. Transition.
Yeah.
No, I think some of the biggest issues to overcome if you're a company who's bringing in influencers is, what do you want? I think it's just like any other pitch. If you go into something and you aren't articulating what you want, if you aren't showing what the end goal looks like, you're going to be a victim of whatever that celebrity wants to tell you, whatever story they want to tell. So when I've seen it go bad, it's that you aren't clearly telling the influencer what you want the outcome to be, and then you're a victim to their celebrity. And nobody wants to be a victim to celebrity, unless you're at a house party, and then that's cool. Because if you want to party with entertainers. But yeah, so I just think that if you're going to step into the influencer game, whether it be entertainers or not, have your plan cleared on what you want the outcome to be.
Celebrities. I think, well, first bit of advice is have a lot of patience and alcohol or Advil. Have a pretty big pocketbook, and I mean, honestly, I think it's two ways people normally go after celebrities. One way, it's like, hey, be my business partner, and you have to be like very cautious of that. And this is just in general, because it could really signal that you're about to have a headache for investors, and you have someone that's used to spending a lot of money, which is other people's money, right? And you don't want to do that. Back to the education front, though, you also have to realize that celebrities are brands, and oftentimes they will just slap their names on something that makes them look good, and they may not necessarily have your best interest in mind. So I just think that you should really approach them, and you should vet them as much as their agents are vetting you, because things that grow fast can also die fast.
Yeah, I was going to basically mirror the same thing, but also just in a way of like on the vet process, it's understanding the person you're bringing through the door, but actually like doing it in a way that lets them authentically tell their story. And so it's kind of like we always talk about like teamwork, right? So like whether you're on a team as an artist, or whether you're on a hockey team or a soccer team, you're always going to have, and again, like you'll always have 10 guys on the football team that will stay by, and they'll give all the fans a high five, and they'll stay there, and they'll sign every autograph until all the kids are gone, and then they'll high five the grandmas on the way out, and they'll be like, that guy's cool. Yeah. But in the end, that's the one you should choose, because the one that will always go to the hospital and the one that will always authentically be them will be the ones that stay. But that's literally a bell curve. Any team, there's going to be another 50% of those guys that just go straight into the locker room, they take their paycheck, they get in their nice car, and they go home, because they're trying to stay private. They don't really like telling their stories. They think that engagement is going to put them out of their comfort zone, to your point. And in the way that you just got to look at the curve. Like, where is the bell curve of the people I'm trying to bring in through my platform? Is it someone that's at the top and wants to go to the hospitals? Just look at their behavior, follow their Instagram, figure out what they're doing. And if it's something that authentically fits to your brand, then I would choose them.
One last thing.
Yeah.
I think when you deal with celebrities, regardless of, well, we're in education, right? But what we found is having entertainment attorneys that have the relationships already with the agencies and the celebrities that you're trying to seek out, but also understanding what all can go wrong with those contracts, because regardless of those photo shoots, it's still business behind closed doors. And a lot of times, changing your contracts to fit what celebrities are used to is ultimately what will get the deal done, or save you a lot of legal fees and time, especially if time is precious, as opposed to approaching it as business as usual with another brand ambassador or something. So, yeah.
This is great. Look, we've talked a lot about how to create sort of a formula for success, how to engage with celebrities, being authentic. We've talked to celebrities who don't read books but are happy to host a book club. And I'm like, no, that's definitely not going to work. I know you can read questions, but you have to care about the book. So we've talked a lot about the things that do work. Why don't we fast forward a little bit into kind of the future? Dwayne, you had asked me a question once about my teenage boys, and this is a no judgment zone, I hope. But, he asked me and he said, how are you staying on top of what they're consuming? You said they spend a lot of time on YouTube. How are you regulating that? And the reality is I'm not. I probably should be doing a better job of it. But now that we have these massive platforms and we have all these opportunities to educate through all these new mediums, where do you see this in sort of a few years out, for the better? And also, where do you see some of the challenges associated with that in terms of so many voices and so much information out there? It can be confusing and overwhelming, particularly to, the youth.
Yeah, and great memory, by the way. But so that question was posed because in this day and age with so much information available to us, who's vetting that information? Where you have professional athletes, talk about how the world is flat because of a YouTube hole that they went down, and no disrespect to him, like it could happen to any of us.
Yeah.
But who's vetting the information, right? Like, so eliminating the barriers is great, but like also I think we're coming to that shift in the pendulum that you understand that, oh wait, some barriers are good, but what are those barriers, and how do we put them in place?
When we talked about that in our prep, I thought it was really important to this conversation when we talk about entertainers or athletes or, the fame in general, how it influences, is that we can't forget that it's a part of the process. So, like, sure, your kids are consuming whatever they're consuming on YouTube. That's just a part of their day in their lives. And if you are a company that's engaging with influencers or entertainers, you have to think in the same way. Set the expectation with your consumer, with your audience, with your learners, that this is intended to influence, not to lead you. I'm here to lead you. I'm here to give you accountability. I'm here to teach you respect. This is just a piece of it, and it's the same in your household. Your family teaches you respect. Your family teaches you accountability. Sure, you can be entertained. Sure, you can be intrigued, but you come back to base, and I think if you have a base, to your point, that's rooted in what you believe in, whether it's accountability, trust, respect, love, those things, then I think you can monitor and maybe balance some of the imbalance, the flat earth.
So opportunity, like where's the world going? I tend to think that because we went from like megastar to social media celebrity influencer to micro influencers, I think what you're gonna see over the next 2 to 3 years is like you're gonna realize that there's ecosystems built around celebrities. Like celebrities drive industry and industry drives celebrities. A great example is like if you go on a music tour, we don't see that. If Drake goes on a global tour, it's 500 people literally traveling around the world with really good professional jobs. And you go to a sports stadium, there's C-suites for the Lakers organization or whatever, right? So I think that the executives are going to begin to get the same amount of spotlight, and the careers that revolve around the celebrities are going to get as much attention as the celebrities. And the reason I think that is because with social media, Gen Zers are just all about entrepreneurship and hustle and figuring out their own path, right? The challenge is millennials and Gen Zers are literally creating the most diverse workforce that this nation has ever seen. So I think organizations now have to figure out from a top level how to make sure that the individuals that are creating these frameworks and mapping out the chart of execution are as diverse as this audience that is going to enter into the workforce over the next 5 to 10 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think lastly, meeting them where they live, as we always talk about, and our Gen Z and millennials are very tech driven and they're very device driven. And so I think, leading with the device is actually, we're always telling kids to get off their phones. Like with that age, you can't, because we put it in their phones before they could talk or they could walk or do anything. And so now we're trying to tell it to get out of their phones, and it's a behavior they can't even compute it. And so now you gotta drive with this. But you can actually use it because of technology to do things out of the house. So for instance, like you can put a phone in your pocket and walk a mile, and I can know that. And so we can use it to get the kids outside. We can use it to create a challenge in their neighborhood. You could use it to take a selfie because you're mentoring a kid in your neighborhood, because you're doing the mentor challenge through X or Y. And so within that, you can use it as a device to create a wider opportunity. But we're thinking about kids looking at their phones in their houses like this, because all the kids that play in my programs are all like, they sit in there, they hang out with each other, but they're actually in their own homes with their headphones on talking to each other over the internet. And so that's not really hanging out. They're like, oh, we're going to hang out tonight. We're like, no, you're not. You're hanging out with your parents, and your buddies are down the street. But you know what I mean? But that's what they think, because that's what they do. And so again, you got to meet them there. What are they doing? Like, can we do like a street hockey match where they got to like all come out and play, because that's the only way they get into the match is if they use the tech. Like this is kind of where I believe it's going, where we got to use it, we got to use the device, and we got to use the actions that they do on it as a way to get them out of the house.
I think there's a lot of tribes being created in the future of technology and social media as well. I think that's we've polarized our world so much, we talked about that there is a lot of tribalism that's happening. Sports, you see all the funding going into creating these neighborhoods and creating these groups online. I think that's a lot what we're gonna see in the next 3 to 5 years as well. A lot of groups that think alike, building their own platforms and coming together on their own platforms. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that's what we're seeing. Communities around shared interest is huge, and it's going to continue to be huge.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that, everyone's not going to be able to become a celebrity, right? So you have to, if you're thinking about skill, like what's the next best thing? The thing is, what powers that celebrity? I think that's really where the unlock is, and the true opportunity, because there can only be one Michael Jackson. I don't care if he teaches you 1,000,000 times how to do the moonwalk or taught you. Like there's only so many markets for that type of revenue or impact to be generated. So if we really think outside of the box, and we have the attention of celebrities to buy in and want to work to educate, we have to allow them then to expose individuals to everything that comes around them. And that clearly it has to be where the future goes, because it can only be so many people in the NBA or the NFL or signed to Universal Music Group or whatever have you, a celebrity, So
let's pivot. We've talked a lot about working with celebrities. You're all athletes. You're all influencers. You're all celebrities. Let's talk a little bit about, as entrepreneurs, how has your background in athletics and your desire to mentor and to coach and to give back, how has that prepared you for the journey that you're on right now?
I mean, again, I was mentored by coaches, and I was mentored by a good support system in sports. I think generally sports is a support system over anything. It depends where you play, and it depends on your opportunity, of course. And I think that's why these guys are doing incredible work, because they're creating that inclusion. And I think it's important that support is really exponential if you can create platforms to do so. And that's why I think sporting background for me was that. It gave me the risk-free ability to go take chances in life, because I knew that if I failed, I'd be supported. Like I had that. Both my parents were coaches and teachers, and so I grew up with educators, like middle-class gym teacher parents that just loved and dropped me off and picked me up and did all the things I needed to do. So when I got crazy with my mindset at 22, and I'm like, I'm gonna go move to Europe with a backpack, and I'm gonna make it as a professional soccer player. And my mom looked at me like I was crazy, but she gave me $200 and said, good luck. And she supported me, and that was all the support I ever needed, because the rest was up to me. But I understood that, and I think that little bit of risk management happens with support. And support now through tech can be scalable, even if you don't have good parents, even if you don't have a good family, even if you don't have good friends, you can find it digitally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, making it to the New England Patriots was everything, because that's where I learned everything that I needed to transition. And I knew that before I got there because of the long success, the sustained success that they had at that organization, that getting to the organization, hey, I'm about to learn something that's going to change my life. And what I learned was history, the importance of history, and how history gives context to this world. I learned about having a routine and the importance of a routine, about understanding myself, right? And the barriers that I put in front of myself based off of the habits, the unknown habits that I create. But all of that was taught at the school of Bill Belichick, right? As I transitioned, right, coming from a background where there was no education, I was the first to go to college. I was the first to even think about going to college. I had to lean into that discomfort. And that's why I bring it back there. Like, I think it's great to engage them. We have to capture their attention from the screens, or on the screens, from the screens, in order to then get them to lean into that discomfort, in order to get that depth of knowledge. And that's what this journey has been like for me. But I lean on all the teachings of Bill Belichick of, hey, look, history matters. Hey, everyone needs a routine, and more.
Yeah, no, very similar. I think my upbringing in sports and athlete, I say all the time, like, sports saved my life. I think a lot of athletes feel that same way. I figured out that I was a coach when I was 18 years old, and I've been coaching ever since. And so I think what it's done for me is it has allowed me to authentically walk in who I am, 10 toes down, no matter what environment I'm in, whether I'm stepping into a room full of venture capitalists, or if I'm stepping into the Atlanta Falcons as the only woman in the locker room and sitting there and watching all these running backs go, what are you doing here? I'm just like you. I'm the baddest running back on the planet. So it just, I think for me, what it really did was give me a sense of self and confidence. And now as an influencer, I can represent that for women. I can sit on a stage full of powerful athletes and really speak very authentically to what I've sort of walked into as a coach and an athlete. And that'll never leave me. And I think it gives me an advantage in the boardroom. I think it gives me an advantage when I'm on stage. And that's what I take in everything I do.
I think playing sports also, even as a kid, it teaches you a lot of lessons that you ultimately use as an adult. How to deal with failure, how to be a good sportsman, how to get along well with people, how to deal with pressure, how to set your own goals. I remember the first time I heard Spanish was on a soccer field, because we played against a semi-pro team that went to Dallas Cup, and that was the coolest thing ever for me at 13 years old. And then, 10 years later, I found myself living in Barcelona, and, I was speaking Spanish because I was intrigued to learn that, Sports, diversity, I've lived across Asia, Europe, and the United States, but more importantly, I think it is one of the only things that kids get an opportunity to do where they get so many life lessons indirectly. And if the ecosystem and the support is there to teach you in those moments, oh, you lost, but you still shake the other person's hand, right? Or you worked hard and you won this championship. You get a trophy. As adults, we get our asses kicked every day, right? And, you wait for your manager or your boss once a month to say good job, and it really doesn't happen. So those moments, I try to make sure we do that with the people that work for us, but these moments are golden to your development, and they shouldn't really be taken for granted. And so, oftentimes when I just look back now as things that I learned in sports, I still carry them with me to this day.
That's great. That's very well said. Look, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of courage and persistence and grit, resilience, all of it, and really on an hourly basis at times. So thank you for sharing that. Jay, I want to go back to something that you were talking about earlier, which is sort of, connectivity through platforms, bringing people together, using celebrities as the anchor for some of these microcosm communities that you're foreseeing in the future, you know, and then bringing it off platform in terms of the connections and the in-person. But you talked a lot about support. You kept referring to support. So do you have some examples to share of how, you know, celebrities as educators are delivering on sort of the support aspect of helping to coach and mentor and guide? So education, not just as a skill, as sort of a trait that you're learning, but education is a way of being and living.
Well, I think part of it is, you know, finding ways to connect to the user. You know, like again, if we give away Zoom calls with the celebrity as that, so you can like earn the right to be in the room with the celebrity and sit with them. So it feels like, oh, but again, you got to earn the right to get there. And so we trick them into thinking that the celebrity is the carrot, but really they had to learn something to get there. And so in a way, that's kind of the behaviors that we need to start to create and almost, because again, we got to start somewhere, and we're kind of losing the battle, in my opinion, about how young people engage with celebrity, why they engage with them. Again, I believe that most of them are engaging for the wrong reasons. My buddy on the phone today, I was talking to him, and he said he was with his team, a U16 Toronto FC team, so like an MLS team, and they all stopped at the border because you can't get the Logan Paul energy drink in Canada or something. And he said they were all fighting at the gas station because there was only 3 left, and it was like a bunch of soccer kids that are drinking this thing that is horrible for them. That it's like, I'm like, who's creating that behavior? You know what I mean? Like, I get it, but that's for me is wrong. And so how we can start to get on this side of like why we can create like this fanaticism of like, did you get the Zoom call? Did you get the pair of Jordans? Did you get to hang out with, you know, whatever? And then all of a sudden it becomes like the new carrots of effort. But then within that effort, you're actually learning something. You're actually creating real value. And so that's where I would really want to see it go.
I think a lot of narcissism comes packed with celebrities. So, you know, one of the things that we do is we really like share our code of ethics with any celebrity we work with. And we've very intentionally scripted or just made sure that humility has to be exuded through the screen as any of these celebrities on our platform are teaching anything, because what we don't want to do is reinforce the behavior of I'm a celebrity and I can do no wrong. And we have to be very intentional and purposeful about that, because you're on set, there's an assistant here, makeup, it's very easy to just go back into your element of a celebrity and have someone go fetch you a coffee or whatever, right? And if all of a sudden you have the opportunity to allow these people to teach, that's probably not what you want them to be teaching young professionals or kids. So just being very cognizant of that is one of the ways I think we can really foster better behavior and have some positive measurable outcomes when we allow celebrities to have a platform to teach.
Odessa, Dwayne. What he said. So this has been really, I think, you know, we've covered a lot of topics around, I'm just going to repeat it again, like authenticity, drivers, how to self-regulate, impact. Let's take outcomes a little bit further. Cortney, you were talking about that. You know, whether it's support, whether it's learning, there's really an opportunity for celebrities to drive, you know, meaningful outcomes as far as these platforms. What are some examples of how you've engaged with celebrities that have had, like, what are you most proud of? Let's do that.
Me?
Yeah, most proud of. Let's do that.
Well, I think because of us, we're trying to kind of like democratize access to better life outcomes. So obviously we're trying to expose a generation of kids and young professionals to things that they've never seen or know exist. And you can see individuals all of a sudden, oh, I can be an actor, but I can be a producer, or I can be an engineer. And I think one of the things that we're most proud of is now like our B2B business, where we're not only working with brands to give us large sums of money to subsidize this, but then saying, hey, since you bought in on this for your corporate image, how about you now work with us to create these curriculums and earmark job opportunities so that there's no longer a pipeline problem or excuses for, you know, why your headcount isn't as diverse as it should be. So that's what I'm most proud about, figuring out how to unlock that.
Yeah, and with the National Football League Players Association, we highlight athletes with our athlete and where we highlight their interests off the field, and it's a way of trying to encourage, but also to show the masses that, hey, look, yeah, they're a professional athlete, but they are also this, right? And whatever that and is more likely that thing that they transition to once they're done with the gridiron. So that's what I'm most.
Thank you. We've got 1 minute left. Jay,
Well, mine is, well, two quick ones. One is the cross section of when a mentor like gets to mentor on the day, as much as the kid gets to listen, and then they both leave like super stoked. Like that's my favorite outcome, because the mentor's like, I'm gonna come back next week. You know what I mean? And then the kids are like, I got to meet that person, and they're super stoked to go out and do what that person does or try that on a greater level. But the other side of what we do is really we monitor the mental health of young people. Our profiles are split into the 9 forms of human intelligence, and so users don't even really get to see their own face. It's their brain split into 9 parts. And so first, it's just the understanding that a young person gets to understand that they have 9 intelligences they can work with is the first result that we like to see, because it kind of gives them a whole new perspective of life. And then the other side of it is actually they when they get things for it, because now they know that knowledge is power, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I want to talk about that thing because this is how I got this reward, or this is how I learned it. And so that for me is always the most gratifying thing. It's like creating that formula that allows people to get that feeling like, oh my God, like when you know something and you see that power of that, it's beautiful to watch.
It's great. Odessa, let's finish.
Communication. I'm
Nice.
most proud of communication. I think with what we're doing at Emtrain and what we're doing in the Women's National Football Conference, the conversations that are having, the communication that comes from influencers and from celebrities, and the conversations you have. And we're just think about the conversations we've had in the last 2 weeks because of a slap. Right? The things that you went and educated yourself about, medical conditions, et cetera, that's all happening through celebrity and through influence. And that same thing happens, what we're doing with women's sports and what we're doing with Emtrain with corporate learning. So I'm most proud of communication and the communication that comes out of it.
Well, this has been great communication and conversation. So thank you for your participation. Thank you, everyone.